So welcome to, I think this is month 6 of our cohort. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, session 6. We're in our 6th month. So we have this call and another call in 2 weeks, and then kind of a wrap up in March. So yeah, it's been a ride. Today, I thought we'd talk about kind of what comes after value chain mapping, because that's just a tool. So what do you do with it? You identify gaps, bottlenecks, and underutilized resources. So we'll talk more about that today. So we're going to do I want to check in on any value chain maps you guys might be working on, and then kind of talk about identifying, what those are, what the gaps and bottlenecks and underutilized resources could be. So I thought we could, these icebreakers are getting harder too, but we've been watching a lot of movies, so I'm always interested in what people have seen in terms of movies that might be interesting. So, let's see, I, we've watched so many movies. Oh, we watched The Upside last night, which actually isn't a recent movie, but it was actually pretty funny. It was well, funny and sad, but mostly funny. With Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston. It was pretty good. Um, yeah, my son is like 20, and so his interest in movies is like they have to be funny, I think. So, yeah, can't find uh can't I don't know, nothing too serious. So, anyway, movies. Anything that you want to share, we'll connect with the rest of the group at some point.
Sure, I can go.
Cool.
Kind of a sadder one.
Oh,
Train Dreams. It's on Netflix. It
okay.
follows the life of a logger and his family that perished in a fire, and
Oh,
just
wow.
kind of witnessing um, early on, kind of setting the theme as him witnessing a Asian American being pushed off the tracks because it's back in the early 1900s and just what they
Wow.
would do. So, yeah,
Mm,
it was a good movie, but
okay.
also sad.
Okay. So probably one for not with the kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely
Okay.
not with a
All
kid.
right. David or Edwin or anything you've been watching recently you recommend?
Well, I don't know if I would recommend it. I mean, the last movie saw in the theater was with my daughter, which was the Zootopia sequel,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
which was actually pretty good. Um,
Yeah.
but I think before that, I mean, it was actually a while. I think it was the A Complete Unknown, the Bob
Oh,
Dylan
yeah. That was a
movie,
good
which was
one.
really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I
Excellent.
need to get to
Yeah.
the movies a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many streaming things. It's like almost unnecessary, but I think the
True,
last one I
true.
saw in the theater was the the new Spinal Tap.
Mm.
um the sequel, the Spinal Tap sequel, but which is good. Edwin, any movies you want to
Um, I,
recommend?
I had to look at my letterbox to remember what I watched. Um, it was a while ago, but there's a movie called One of Them Days by SZA and Kiki Palmer. That was really good, comedy. I
Ah,
enjoyed that one. The last movie
cool.
I saw in theaters was actually the second part of Wicked. I'm not really a big
Oh,
fan of like
yeah.
musical theater, but I was dragged with
Yeah.
my friends. But it was an enjoyable watch. Mm,
Okay.
Didn't really, but I
Cool.
felt like I also saw the first one. I feel like everybody preferred the first one over the second one, and I kind of did too. It felt like it was like a rushed.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was
Isn't
more
that always the
music in the
way?
storyline. Yeah, and this is
Right.
me coming in blind because I never read Wicked or anything like that. But I preferred the first one over the second one for sure. So
Gotcha.
yeah, that's I think that's what
Okay.
I have so far. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks for indulging me. I'm always looking. But yes, sequels I feel like are rarely live up to the original, although
Yeah.
I would argue Godfather 2 is pretty good, but
I haven't seen that one.
ooh, it's good.
But yeah, I feel like you said, they're very hit or miss. I think at
Yes.
least with my generation, the millennials and Gen Zers, I think Shrek 2 is the most praised sequel from what I've seen in online discourse, which is
Wow.
interesting.
All right.
Kids cartoon.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks for indulging me. I think we'll move forward. It's nice to hear something besides work stuff sometimes, right? Um, okay, the usual, just back to our principles, reminding you about what the outcomes are really all about, the forms of wealth, which start to come into this discussion of gaps, bottlenecks, and underutilized resources, especially underutilized resources. I mean, that's another way to look at these capitals is what do we have that we're not using? And that could be something physical, like a building or a property, but it could also be something more intangible, like a whole population of people's skills that maybe we're not using effectively. Again, I wanted to kind of reiterate this, like the kind of, I know people have struggled, and at some point, maybe in the next call, I do want to kind of debrief a little bit and hear kind of what's worked, what hasn't. But right now, again, it's come back to this idea of like, why even learn about wealth creation? And I still think that this looking through the lens is really important. So there are all these interesting different ways of integrating wealth creation in your work that don't necessarily mean that you're doing like a wealth creation project. Um, as I've said, I feel like it's kind of the way I look at the world right now. So it doesn't mean I'm doing anything specific necessarily, but I'm encouraging folks to kind of look through this lens. And as EDDs, using this lens might look like some of these different things. So using in your SEDS, supporting sectors, individual sectors to collaborate, building partnerships and actually supporting market opportunities by bringing partners together through value chain mapping to identify gaps and how to fill them. So I want to keep going back to that because I feel like sometimes people, they think it's a project and it doesn't have to be a project. I mean, it can lend itself to supporting a project, but it's not necessarily something additional that you're being asked to do. It's just how you look at your work. So again, we were talking about value chains. I thought I'd do a quick review of what we were talking about, which is, here's the definition of a wealth creation value chain, which is really about connecting local production, supply to regional demand to bring prosperity into rural communities and urban. I mean, again, it can be used anywhere. We always start with market demand, like what do people actually want that we can provide. We want to always be thinking about the greatest wealth building potential, like how can we create opportunities that create outcomes across those capitals. And we map the process and the partners and then identify, the gaps. And the gaps are really great opportunities for entrepreneurs to fill those gaps. So we talked about who is in a value chain. There's like the demand side, the buyers, the functions, which are like the things that actually have to happen to get from supply to demand. The transactional partners are those people, businesses, or organizations that actually touch that product or service. So they're sourcing or aggregating or processing, purchasing, distributing, and the input suppliers, all of those folks. And then the support partners are those who are actually providing infrastructure, technical assistance, support, financial support that helps the value chain to do what it's supposed to do. And as I've said before, EDDs typically fit into that support partner role, right? You're not going to necessarily be building a value chain, but you might be supporting folks to actually build a value chain. You might be helping to identify the key partners or the infrastructure or the assets that go into a particular value chain. So we talked about mapping value chains. I don't know if anyone's actually done this, but I thought I'd check back in case anybody wanted to like share something or talk about something they've been thinking about in terms of, and again, I don't really want to create busy work for you, but if there's something you're thinking about, like sometimes it does help to map it out visually, just to think about who actually is in your place. So I thought I'll stop there for a second and just ask if anybody has any questions, anything they want to share about this kind of idea of value chain mapping, or any sectors or market opportunities you're thinking about.
Yeah, so I've started with some on agriculture.
Oh,
So we're
right.
actually, I'm trying,
Cool.
with the SEDS committee, I'm trying to have it so we have a unique location each time we meet up. And for
Oh,
our
yeah.
early summer meetup, it's going to be at the community college. They have a viticulture program. So having
Oh,
a professor come in and talk about, grapes from the region, how that comes in, and the winemaker students, and even glass bottles that they use to
yeah.
bottle. So starting somewhat of a process there, and looking to have broader conversations with the SEDS committee, using that as kind of a, hey, here's a intro into value chain mapping.
I love that. That's great. I think there's some really interesting, I think agriculture and including winemaking are like much easier um, opportunities to map because they are pretty linear, right? Like you get all your inputs, right? The bottles, all of that stuff, and the actual ingredients, and it moves along kind of a given path. I think it probably looks a lot like the one I've already shared, the tomato soup one, except it's wine, right? I mean, so I think you have an easy way to kind of, I mean, sometimes I would argue even having a very simplistic map may be a nice way to start that conversation, right? This is a very like generic, generic winemaking map, but like what do we have and what's missing? Like sometimes it's helpful, I've noticed, to give people something to react to, right? Than necessarily creating it out of whole cloth. But yeah, so that may be helpful. I mean, I'd be happy to help you with that too, if that's something that would be useful. Yeah,
I might have you check
cool.
it over once I have it
Yeah,
written down a little
absolutely.
bit more.
I'm happy to do it. And I guess the other thing I'll say about value chain maps is they're not like they're not set in stone, right? They're constantly evolving. So anytime you make one, it's just kind of an approximation of what you know at that moment in time, right? So the other thing I guess I should say is typically when you're value chain mapping, you're mapping it for what you hope it to be, right? The kind of, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. I mean, I think the best use of it is to actually map it at scale. Like, what does it look like at scale? And then if you compare that with what the situation is right this moment, that's where you find your gaps, right? And your bottlenecks, because some of those things don't exist, right? So that's typically how we do it, is like it's at a scaled out, like ideal, like kind of value chain, like it's actually moving product back and forth. But yeah, so that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, quick
Mm-hmm.
question for David.
Yeah.
Is your organization, or do you work with any of your communities on materials management planning right now?
We
Ah,
do, yeah. We're heavily involved in materials management planning. Unfortunately, I won't be able to give you much information on that because I'm not involved with it personally, but I can certainly
Mhm.
connect you with somebody if you wanted to get more information.
Yeah, I'm not the lead in my office either, but I think there is a lot of potential with circular economy with the materials management
mm,
stuff. I mean, changing human behavior, which is kind of difficult, but I think there is some potential there.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
definitely. And actually, I know Michigan State is actually looking closely at that sort of circular economy topic through their, are you familiar with REI
Yeah,
group?
and they have a whole program. I forget what it's called. They like the decommissioning, tearing down of a deconstructing of a building kind of thing, even.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I need to plug into MSU more. They're doing some great stuff there.
Yep.
Great. Oh, I love it. Connections being made. Okay. Any other, Edwin, David, anything on your minds related to a value chain? I know, Edwin, you were talking about kind of an aerospace thing. Anything on that you want to talk about?
So let me see. Uh, I think the worksheet that you gave us,
Yeah.
the one that kind of says as you map the value chain, consider what specific product services the value
Yeah.
chain will provide, the one with the bullet points. I feel like that was a good like
Oh,
template
good.
to follow. Because I have worked on the sets current sets document that we have, the 2022 to 2027 one, and we're gonna start updating that one. And so
Mm,
obviously we do talk about like supply chains and that kind of stuff. And I feel like this made me understand the concept a little bit better for sure.
oh, good.
Especially for aerospace, because it is, even though it's established, it's still growing. Like there's still a lot of small
Mm,
companies opening up headquarters in warehouses. And also, when I worked on a economic plan for the city of Titusville, which houses a lot of these
mm.
companies like Lockheed Martin, we told them
Yeah.
to start being competitive at the international level, to like go to Europe and start attracting
Mm,
businesses over there. So this really did help kind of understand that aspect more of like, because obviously I'm still kind of new to
yeah.
this job
Oh,
field.
sure.
So um
Yeah.
it's easy for me to tell the city, oh yeah, just go over there and capture people from over there and bring business over here. But it's another thing to
Right.
kind of understand how exactly that should be
Yeah.
made. So
Well, and the other thing I guess I should say is aerospace is a big industry, right? So
yeah.
one thing I don't know if I've mentioned, but I may have, is that we want to get pretty specific in what that
Hmm.
market opportunity is. So like
For
even
sure.
agriculture is too big, right? Like what kind of
Yeah.
agriculture are we really focusing on? And the viticulture, the winemaking, that's specific, right? That's a very
Yeah.
particular product. But like, even any of the big kind of sectors, tourism is too big, right? So
Yeah.
what kind of tourism? So like in New Hampshire, the example I was hoping Sally would share is all about uh, you know, uh non-motorized recreation kinds of tourism and um other examples. I know I was working with a tribe out in South Dakota doing wealth works, and we were talking about agriculture, but we were talking about three different ideas. One was like buffalo, one was walleye, and one was kind of diversified produce. But, so the idea is to get, as specific as you can get because it'll just make your job that much easier
Yeah.
to specialize and really focus in on a particular product or group of products. So yeah, I'd encourage you to drill down a little bit more on that era. Like, are there gaps in the current aerospace kind of sector that could be their own little mini value chain. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So
Actually,
are
yeah,
there,
that is.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that is a good
No, go ahead.
point. I think when we did the economic plan for Titusville, I think we also honed in on that, on like, hey, you will also benefit on having like people who make like parts or supplies for like the established companies that you already have.
Yes.
And on my worksheet, I actually do have some of like that breakdown.
Mhm.
I do know a lot of like the, I guess, like warehouses that we have is focuses on maintenance, repair, overhaul. We
Mm.
do have a lot of defense and military services, and obviously launch services and all of
Mhm.
the components that are able to help, those space launches happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
So
All
yeah, like
right.
you said, there is diversity, and it's important to like hone in on what is it that you're talking about. Yeah.
Right. What's the need, right? What's the
Yeah.
demand that isn't being met is the way I think about it in the aerospace field. Like what's missing that people need, is where what I would start talking to people about. But
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Mhm.
David, anything on your mind? No pressure, but in
Yeah, I
case.
mean, I did kind of approach it, I guess from a more specific issue. So in one of our
Good.
7 counties, they've long been trying to, they have no camping within their county border.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
that's like kind of like an obvious gap. So that's kind of where I started from. And so,
Yeah.
um, looking at the different examples that you provided, I struggled to sort of get started. So I basically just started brainstorming and ended up kind of
Mm-hmm.
filling like 7 containers. So kind of all of the things that would be associated with sort of bringing a campground to the county, right? So, in
Yeah.
terms of the land, site development, supporting functions, the different amenities that a campground might have. And so, what are the opportunities with those amenities or with the site development and some of the systems that would be needed? Um,
Yeah.
some of the potential partnerships, and then,
Mm-hmm.
list of demand partners, of course. So
Great.
it's
Good.
still a little bit maybe, a little bit scattered maybe. And
That's
after I
okay.
work with it little bit more to get it a little bit more into the some of the specific categories you mentioned,
Yeah.
might be a little more useful.
Great.
But yeah,
Good.
once I kind of got stuff sort of and started to containerize it, it started to,
Yeah.
you know, flow a little bit better, I guess, so to speak.
Sure. Great. That's exciting. All right. Yeah, I'm happy to look at anything you all want to put together, share, if it helps. And again, the map isn't the end in itself. It's a tool to figure out how to move forward. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So oh, I just wanted to, I'm not going to play this for you just because you guys can watch it on your own time. There's this great professor, and I think he's in Australia. Anyway, he does really cool value chain videos. So I found one that I thought I'd share. Anyway, I'll share this. Obviously, I'll share this with you. Actually, can I put it? Oops. You know what? Maybe I can put it in the chat. That way you don't have to look through the whole. Anyway, it's a good one. I guess the other thing I would say is the WealthWorks website. So not the NATO version, but the um there we go. Okay. Um the WealthWorks website, the original actually has some really great videos if you need if it's helpful to kind of I don't know, sometimes people learn differently, right? They want to hear a story. um so there's some really nice videos, and they're also really, I think they're short and they can be really good for engaging other people. Like if you're trying to convey some of these concepts to other people, these videos can be really helpful. Yeah, on the WealthWorks website, there's a whole page full of videos of different elements of the approach if it's useful. But I just kind of randomly stuck this in because I've been looking for it for months. I finally found it. So sorry, it's just there. But anyway, so we develop our value chain, and then the idea is to identify gaps, underutilized resources, bottlenecks. Because as I said, when you're developing a value chain map, you're meant to develop it as kind of at scale. So it's actually working, right? Like everything that needs to be involved to make it work. And doing that allows us to see what's missing, right? Like if there's supposed to be this function and we don't have that function, how do we make that function happen? So the idea is to name the gaps, underutilized resources, and bottlenecks. And then, the way we also think about it is, which ones have you can't fill them all at once, right? Like there's so many. I think I shared a map with you. I'm going to find it. I shared a map with you. Oh, can you guys still see this? No. I shared one that I'm going to share again because I think it speaks to what I'm talking about. Okay. Can you see this? No. Oh my goodness. Okay. Sorry. Where am I? Okay, share. Yeah, I want to share this because it's kind of speaking to what I'm talking about. Like I shared this with you, I think, last time. This is a map that we did. It's in Western New York. It's around recreation. And what we did is kind of built it out and then had discussions. I think the gaps became clear. Once we mapped it out, it was clear what was missing. So those are the ones that are outlined in this black color. And then I think we might have done dots, which I know some people really hate that. I think sometimes dots can be really useful and sometimes they might not be. But in this case, it was useful because we had a room full of people and we could get people's, part of it is you want to make sure there's some energy and excitement behind what happens next. So by getting people to vote with dots, we could figure out where people thought the priorities were. And you can see the red dots are where that's where we decided the priorities were. And we developed some working groups to actually work through these gaps. So this is just one example, I think, of like, how do you do that, right? You like map it out and you have some conversations. I mean, some of it becomes really clear what's missing. I mean, the lodging, retailers, those kind of physical things, it became really clear that those things were missing. But yeah, so this is one way of doing that that I thought went really well. So back to here. So, and then I guess the other thing is we're always trying to identify, where to go based on the greatest effect. So what's the leverage, which is back to our principles, right? Which strategies, which gaps, if we fill them, will create the most forms of wealth, we'll keep that wealth local, and we'll build livelihoods. So we're going to go back to our tomato soup example just because it's simple and I can share what some of these things mean. We talked about this. This is kind of a very generic map that I usually use. It's about tomato soup. And it's really simplistic. Clearly, there would be lots of more green boxes. There'd be input suppliers to the left of the growers. There'd be someone who's growing tomatoes, somebody who's growing the herbs, there's all this stuff, but this is the simplified version. So the gaps is kind of obvious, but it's the functions that are needed to get a good or service to market but aren't currently available. So like in that in that example I was just sharing with you, it was, lodging and restaurants and retail. So like here's an example. You need to be able to train people in graphic design, but no one in the region offers that training. Gaps do provide entrepreneurial opportunities for businesses. Or I've seen gaps be filled by existing value chain businesses. There's a great example I like to use from Utah. There's a community called Green River. It's like down the road from Moab. And they are trying to like bring more people to recreate there and not take them away from Moab, but Moab is so overrun. They want to provide an alternative. And one of their gaps was lodging. And the outfitter on the river was like, once he understood that that was a gap, he decided that he could help fill that gap. So he actually sectioned off a part of his his building for lodging. Like I mean, not a lot of lodging, but still, like he saw that there was a gap, and an existing partner decided he could help support the filling of that gap by adding lodging to his offerings. So it could be an entrepreneurial or opportunity for a new business, or it could also be an opportunity for an existing business to kind of ease into another function. And they can also exist on the demand side, where you might have identified a demand that's not being met. So in this example, there's an issue from, if we look back at this map, from distribution to demand, there's a gap here. There's no distributor. There's no one providing transportation. So that's like an example. Or there's also a gap where there's a particular size or kind of packaging that the demand partners are seeking that isn't being provided by our distributor here. So maybe they need to find a producer of that particular kind of packaging. So those are kind of examples of gaps that are pretty close to demand, but there could be also gaps, on the supply side too. Maybe there's not enough growers growing tomatoes, right? That's a gap. Maybe there's not enough tomatoes being grown to supply this demand side. Or maybe, yeah, a gap could be in any part of this map. A bottleneck is something that prevents the value chain from operating effectively or getting to scale. So I know this is like doubled up. So the lack of shared standards or regulatory inconsistencies can be bottlenecks. I think in this example, it's like a training. Yeah, proper training or practices to receive GAP certification. So there's an issue, a bottleneck between the certifier and the vegetable grower, because they need to be GAP certified, which is a thing with food often. And so that lack of training is a bottleneck. And if we provide support to that certifier to make that training more relevant, and maybe it's cheaper, I don't know the specifics, but this is a bottleneck that's keeping the vegetable growers from being able to participate effectively in this value chain. So a bottleneck could also be, I feel like bottlenecks are often like regulatory, right? Like there may be some rule that a partner may not be able to engage with because they don't have the proper certification or the proper training. It could be, entrepreneurial training too. If you have people who want to engage, but they're just not quite ready, that's a bottleneck. And then underutilized resources. All these value chains are built on resources. So underutilized resources are typically things that can be brought into productive use and meeting market demand, but they're not currently. So, and they can be on the supply side, the demand side, they can be, physical infrastructure, they can be a category of workers. Yeah. Oh, and this is a good example. If low-income households want energy-efficient homes, but lack the upfront capital to invest, right? Like there's interest, but there's that capital is missing. And waste is almost always an underutilized resource, right? We treat waste as this thing that just goes to the landfill, but if that waste can be repurposed in some way, that's then making it utilized. It's gone from underutilized to utilized. So we often think a lot of times waste in these value chains can often become its own little chainlet, where you have like a full chain, and then the waste piece can then almost create another chain sometimes. Yeah, actually, some work I was doing in Ohio, we were mapping out agricultural value chains around, I think, beef, wool, and like manure. And two of those, the manure was definitely a waste product that we were trying to repurpose into energy. And the wool value chain that we put together was about waste wool. It was the wool that you can't make into sweaters and things like that. What do you do with it, right? And so we had a whole value chain around that, about making waste wool into like wool pellets for insulation and for gardening and things like that. So that waste is an underutilized resource that can then become its own value chain potentially. And you can see here, there's idle land. These things on the side are the underutilized resources. So part-time truckers could be an underutilized resource to handle our gap of transportation. We've got idle land that can be used to grow more tomatoes or whatever. We've got marketing students that can help in the distribution. And on the demand side, I think it's saying here the hospital and the consumers are underutilized, right? So anyway, just some examples of how this plays out. I mean, these are always different. This is obviously using a very simplistic tomato soup chain, but that's kind of how you start to look at this, like what's missing, right? What do we have that isn't being used effectively, and what's missing? And then leverage is really about like, how do you make change in those gaps, bottlenecks, and underutilized resources that is most impactful in redirecting and reshaping the entire chain. So the idea is to keep pushing this value chain and the system forward so it's operating at its most effective rate. So the idea here are like the steps you would take, right? You'd review your value chain, add in any new information you have, look for gaps, underutilized resources, and bottlenecks on the demand side. So is there existing demand to connect with? Is there unrealized demand to unleash, or demand to create? I know we talked a little bit about demand, about the different kinds of demand. And some of that has to do with this, right? So is there less obvious demand? Like, are there new ideas that we haven't thought about? Anyway, and then look on the supply side, right? Functions that are needed to make the value chain work, areas where the function's being provided but in ways that aren't helpful, and areas where the function exists but needs to be actually linked. The value chains are all about linking, right? Connecting these partners in ways that make things happen. And then the idea is, like, you have so many gaps, bottlenecks, and underutilized resources. How do you start? And the idea is to rate them in terms of leverage, right? Like the leverage that can be created in the system, and the kinds of wealth that can be built by filling that gap. Are there ways you can keep that wealth local? So I mean, I don't have a sheet for this, or like a worksheet, but you could definitely create one based on the things that matter to you. You could kind of rate your gaps, bottlenecks, and underutilized resources in a lot of different ways. You could think about the leverage piece, you could think about the forms of wealth they will build, and the keeping wealth local piece, the livelihoods piece. I've definitely worked with folks around value chains where there are so many gaps, and we actually did have the conversation about, are there ways we can tweak some of these strategies that are going to create more wealth, or keep that wealth local? And then that's where your opportunities and interventions come from. What can you design to address the leverage points? Who are the people you need to talk to? So again, engaging partners to make things happen, understanding where the leverage is, and then just doing your best to make it happen. Again, it's a tool. It's a framework for looking at what's possible. And these are just some questions that could be helpful as you're thinking about this. So on the demand side, what have you heard from your potential demand partners? We talked about reaching out to demand. What are their pain points? That's like when I'm doing demand interviews, that's what I'm asking. Like, what is keeping you up at night? What is keeping you from being happy about where you are right now? Like, what do they want that they can't get now? How do you create market-driven demand? How can economically marginalized people and places contribute to demand? And then on the supply side, where the bottlenecks you're discovering, what kinds of social and political capital would be needed to overcome some of those bottlenecks? I mentioned a lot of this is policy and regulation can often be bottlenecks. So how do you move the needle on those? And then how can underutilized resources be used to fill a gap? So just some questions that you can be thinking about as you are looking at that map and yeah. Yeah, so I just like chattered for a while. Any questions? Again, I think it will make more sense once you have something to look at, like what those gaps, bottlenecks, and underutilized resources are. I mean, and actually, if I'm being honest, the underutilized asset piece is something that you don't need a value chain to be thinking about, right? All of our regions have underutilized resources, right? Regardless of whether you're thinking about a value chain or not. And those are the resources that can be put into productive use in lots of different ways, even outside, a value chain. I mean, I think about all of the, vacant buildings, right? Vacant buildings, vacant property, populations that aren't being engaged in the economy, right? I think about youth or, veterans, or I don't know, any number of populations of people could be underutilized. And yeah, I mean, there's waste. I mean, waste is definitely an underutilized resource in a lot of ways. So that piece, I feel like regardless, I feel like underutilized resources is a concept that can be used anywhere, regardless of whether it's wealth creation or not. So anyway, I'm going to stop for a second and see if you all have questions, concerns. Yeah, I don't. I think I was gonna I was hoping Sally would be here. I think she's still sick, but this was a value chain I supported in New Hampshire around recreation. Human-powered recreation is what she called it. And some of the gaps were just social capital, like getting to know other people in the industry. And there was definitely like a workforce issue, as you can imagine, right? Recreation is sort of a part-time, it's not necessarily a career, like a full-time job for people, right? It has that kind of seasonal challenge. And on the social and political side, they instituted, and I think I've mentioned this before, this like rec after hours where they'd get all of the kind of recreation industry people together and they'd host it in different places so they could get to know the offerings in those places and also the people. And so all of a sudden they created, and they went hiking or they went biking and then they'd have a happy hour or something, but it created this opportunity for everybody to get to know each other. And then they were able to kind of think about their different places and help think about packaging things and sending people to other parts of the region to experience things. And on the workforce side, there was also a housing barrier too, like that there's these like seasonal people that have housing challenges, so they started finding underutilized resources to think about housing. Are there people with extra rooms or little cottages or I don't know what, or is there underutilized house? I mean, housing is, there's, we all have housing issues, right? So that's like an ongoing challenge all around, but you can imagine it's even more challenging when you're talking about seasonal workers who maybe don't have the funds to pay for housing in certain places without a little help. So anyway, I'm hoping she will still join us and tell us more about all of that. But yeah. Questions, concerns, comments? Okay. So here's where we are. We're at identifying gaps, bottlenecks. We've got 2 more meetings. We've got one in 2 weeks, and then we have one in March 11th, just kind of like wrapping us up, seeing how people feel like they're going to use it. I would love to get some feedback on what's working, what's not working. So maybe we'll try to do that next time. Or in March, I don't know. But, I'm putting together a new cohort and I want to, know what's good, what's bad, and how I can change things to be more relevant. So yeah, I didn't put homework here, but I guess the idea is if you are mapping your value chain to like start to think about what those gaps, bottlenecks, and underutilized assets might be. So yeah, that's what I've got. Again, the WealthWorks website, this is what I'm talking about when I was talking about the videos. There's tons of great videos if you want to take a look at them. Our website, also good. There's all sorts of stuff there. And registration, I told you that we're offering free registration for everybody in the cohort. So if you're interested, let me know. I think that has to be done one, there's no like special code. So I just have to get somebody to register you. So if any of you are interested, just let me know and I will pass your information along to our events person who will register you. So that's that. That's what I've got for you today. Yeah, any kind of, I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions, anything you want to share or anything I can help with? And I'm totally fine, again, I've mentioned this before, but if it's useful to have a one-on-one call, I'm happy to talk through your individual sector, place, value chain, if that's useful. So just keep me posted.
Real quick, how many people do you typically have at those conferences? Do you have
Yeah,
in mind?
it's on the smaller side, which I kind of like. Last time we had about 75. So it's a pretty, um, it's a nice size. We have concurrent sessions, so that group gets split across a couple of sessions at any given time. And we're going to have several mobile workshops. We're collaborating with rural development initiatives in the Pacific Northwest. So our conferences are overlapping, which is kind of interesting. So there will be some overlap, especially for the mobile workshops and for that last day, because we're specifically overlapping at that point. So there'll be a lot of Oregon, Washington, Idaho kind of communities to engage with, which will be fun. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. I can share. I will, you know what, I will share the more detailed agenda that I'm working on. It's still a work in progress, but and which is why it's not on the website because I'm still chipping away at it. But I will share it with all of you of what the topics will be and a sense of what those mobile workshops will be. Yeah, I have Kimber Lanning from Local First Arizona doing one of the plenaries, which I'm excited about. She's really engaging and really interesting, and she's kind of spearheaded um, local businesses and cooperatives and all of that in Arizona. And I have Bonita Robertson Hardy from the Aspen Institute, who will be doing a session with one of our EDDs. So yeah, anyway, there should be some interesting stuff. We're going to have a session on, I think I have Joni Buckley, who does a lot of work with First Nations about engaging tribes and other groups that may be kind of less engaged. So in your work. So I think that should be fun. And Bend is beautiful. I haven't been there, but it looks amazing. I'm super excited. It's a dark sky community, which I'm fascinated by. So I'm thinking about seeing if we can offer like a dark sky kind of opportunity. We'll see. Um, but yeah, anyway, that's the basics. I will share like kind of a little bit more detailed agenda with you all and you can see for yourself. But yeah, it's probably 70 to 80 people. So it's a nice kind of um a little bit more close close knit, but opportunity for you know, more in-depth discussion, I think, with a smaller group. So anyway.
Yeah. I'll likely be able to attend, just crunching the numbers, making sure we have enough in our
Yeah.
partnership planning grant, but I think we're sitting pretty good.
Okay. Great. Yeah. As I said, I'd love for any and all who want to come to join us. I think it will be fun. All the Oregon EDDs will be there, and I'm surprised. I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised. Last time we had it in the Southeast, and the Southeast is our biggest region. And so I was like, oh, the West is kind of a smaller region. But there are folks coming from um, Michigan, other folks from Michigan who said they're coming. There's someone coming from Vermont besides me, which is exciting. So people are coming from even farther away than I thought. So it's cool. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that sounds great. So keep me posted and I will get you registered if that's going to happen, Jared or anybody else. And that's what I've got. And we'll have our next call in 2 weeks. So, you know, keep working on those value chain maps and maybe at the next call we can talk about any, you know, gaps or bottlenecks you've identified that we could talk through. So, and also happy to just help with whatever value chain mapping you're doing if you want to get on the phone. So, all right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Good to see you all. And
Yes.
see you in a couple of weeks, if not sooner.
All right.
All
Take care,
right.
everybody.
Have a great week.
Thank you. Sounds good
All
then.
right. Bye.
Bye.